Hello, Facebook friends and YouTube viewers. I'm Melissa Eloise Osborne, coming from Marathon, New York. Happy Motivation Monday. And I hope you guys are all set, ready for the week. On your mark, get set, go. Lesson 8. Which is going to be a long one. But you know what? When I get done reading all these, I'm going to go back and listen to them because I love it when the story opens up my mind and I can actually leave when I feel what the author wrote. That's part about writing, and it teaches you also how to write your own book. So if you're tuning in, say hi, don't be shy. Let me know where you're tuning in from. And I am a network marketer, entrepreneur. I help people build their business using their phone from anywhere. I learned that from Fallon. If you don't know her, follow her. She's the lady with the blue hair and a parrot. But she's cool as shit. Um, and I wanted to give you guys a tip. If you want a break and you just don't want any notifications and all that other stuff, you can deactivate your account. Other than just logging off, you can deactivate. But a lot of people are going to think that you delete stuff, though, because of that. It will come back on when the person comes back on, when they reactivate their account. Don't freak out, because I've done that today. Okay. Habit of performing more service than paid for. So who's ever done that? You know, worked more than what they got paid for. Okay. First, affirmations. Gotta do my affirmations. That's a must. On a day-to-day basis, you must. You must. I believe in myself. I believe in those who work with me. I believe in my employer. I believe in my friends. I believe in my family. I believe that God will lend me everything I need with which to succeed if I do my best to earn it through faithful and honest service. I believe in prayer, and I will never close my eyes in sleep without praying for divine guidance to the end. That I will be patient with other people and tolerant with those who do not believe as I do. I believe that success is the result of intellect effort. It does not depend on luck or sharp practices or double-crossing friends, fellow men, or my employer. I believe I will get out of life exactly what I put into it. Therefore, I will be careful to conduct myself toward others as I would want them to act toward me. I will not slander those whom I do not like. I will not slight my work no matter what I may see others doing. I will render the best service of which I am capable, because I have pledged myself to succeed in life. And I know that success is always a result of conscientious and efficient effort. Finally, I will forgive those who offend me, because I realize that I will sometimes offend others, and I will need their forgiveness. There are more than a score of sound reasons why you should develop the habit of performing more service and better service than that for which you are paid, despite the fact that a large majority of people are not rendering such service. There are two reasons, however, the rendering such service reason that transcends in importance all the others. First, by establishing a reputation as being a person who always renders more service and better service than that for which you are paid. You will benefit by comparison with those around you who do not render such service, and the contrast will be so noticeable that there will be keen competition for your service, no matter what your life work may be. It would be an insult to your intelligence to offer proof of the soundness of this statement, because it is obvious sound. Whether you are preaching sermons, practicing law, writing books, teaching school, or digging ditches, you will become more valuable, and you will be able to command greater pay. The minute you gain recognition as a person who does more than that for which he is paid, Second, by far the most important reason why you should render more service than that for which you are paid, a reason that is basic and fundamental in nature, may be described in this way. Suppose that you wish to develop a strong right arm, and that you try to do so by tying the arm to your side with a rope, thus taking it out of use and giving it a long rest. Would disuse bring strength, or would it bring atrophy and weakness result finally in your being compelled to have the arm removed? You know that if you want a strong right arm, you could develop such a arm only by giving it the hardest sort of use. Take a look at the arm of a blacksmith. If you want to know how an arm may be made strong, out of resistance comes strength. The strongest oak tree of the forest is not the one that is protected from the storm and hidden from the sun. It is one of that stands in the open, where it compelled to struggle for its existence against the winds and rains and scorching sun. It is through the operation of one of nature's unvarying laws that struggle and resistance develop strength, and the purpose of this lesson is to show you how to harness this law, and so use it that it will aid you in your struggle for success by performing more service and better service than that for which you are paid. You only exercise your service rendering qualities, though thereby develop skill and ability of an extraordinary sort, but you build reputation that is valuable. If you form the habit of rendering such service, you will become so adept in your work that you can command greater rem- remu- uh, remuneration, remuneration than those who do not perform such service. You will eventually develop sufficient strength to enable you to remove yourself from any undesirable station in life, and no one can or will want to stop you. If you are an employee, you can make yourself so valuable through this habit of performing more service than that for which you are paid, that you can practically set your own wages, and no sensible employer will try to stop you if your employer should be so unfortunate as to try to withhold from you the compensation to which you are entitled. This situation will not long remain as a handicap, because other employers will discover this unusual quality and offer you employment. The very fact that most people are rendering as little service as they can possibly get by this serves as an advantage to all who are rendering more service than for which they are paid, because it enables all who do so to profit by comparison. You can get by if you render a little service as possible, but that is all you will get. And when your work is slack and workforce reduction sets in, you will be one of the first to be dismissed. I gotta drink some more of my coffee. So what are you having this morning? For more than 25 years, I have carefully studied men with the object of ascertaining why some achieve noteworthy success while others, while just as much ability, do not get ahead. And it seems significant that every person whom I have observed applying this principle of rendering more service than that for which he was paid was holding a better position and receiving more pay than those who merely performed sufficient service to get by. Personally, I've never received a promotion in my life that I could not trace directly to recognition that I had gained by rendering more service and better service than that for which I was paid. I am stressing the importance of making this principle a habit as a means of enabling an employee to promote himself to a higher position with greater pay, because this course will be studied by thousands of young men and young women who work for others. However, the principle applies to employer or to professional man or woman, just the same as the employee. Observance of this principle brings a twofold reward. First, it brings the reward of greater material gain than that enjoyed by those who do not observe it. And second, it brings the reward of happiness and satisfaction that come only to those who render such service. If you receive no pay except that which comes in your pay envelope, you are underpaid, no matter how much money that envelope contains. Or yeah, envelope contains. My wife has just returned from public library with a book for me to read. The book is entitled Observation. Every Man Has His Own University by Russell H. Conwell. By chance, I opened this book at the beginning of the chapter entitled Every Man's University. And as I read it through, my first impulse was to recommend that you go to the public library and read the entire book. On the second thought, I will not make this recommendation. Instead, I will recommend that you purchase a book and read it, not once, but 100 times, because it covers the subject of lesson as though it had been written for that purpose and covers it in a far more impressive manner than I could. The following quotation from the chapter entitled Every Man's University will give you an idea of the golden nugget of truth to be found throughout the book. The intellect can be made to look far beyond the range of what men and women ordinarily see, but not all the colleagues in the world can alone confer this power. This is a reward of self-culture. Each must acquire it for himself. And perhaps this is why the power of observing deeply and widely is so much more often found in those men and those women who have never crossed the threshold of any college but the University of Hard Knocks. Read that book as a part of this lesson because it will prepare you to profit by philosophy and psychology upon which lesson is built. We will now analyze the law upon which this entire lesson is founded, namely, the law of increasing returns. Let us begin our analysis by showing how nature employs this law in behalf of the tillers of the soil. The farmer carefully prepares the ground and sows his wheat and waits while the law of increasing returns brings back seed he has sown, plus a manifold increase. But for this law of increasing returns, man would perish because he could not make the soil produce sufficient food for his existence. There would be no advantage to be gained by sowing a field of wheat if the harvest yield did not return more than was sown. With a vital tip from nature, which we may gather from the wheat field, let us proceed to appropriate this law of increasing returns and learn how to apply it to the service we render, to the end that it may yield returns is in excess of and out of proportion to the effort put forth. First of all, let us emphasize the fact that there is no trickery or chicanery connection with this law, although quite a few seem not to have learned this. In great truth, judging by the number who spent all of their efforts either trying to get something for nothing or something for less than its true value. It is no such end, but we recommend to use the law of increasing returns, for such an end is possible within the broad meaning of the word success. Another remarkable and noteworthy feature of the law of increasing returns is that it may be used by those who purchase service with a great return, as it can be used by those who render service. As proof we have. Small opportunities are often beginning of great enterprises. Demos themes, I can't even pronounce it. To study the effort of Henry Ford's famous $5 a day minimum wage scale, which he acquired some years ago. Those who are familiar with the facts say that Mr. Ford was not playing the part of the philanthropist. When he integrated this minimum wage scale To the contrary, he was merely taking advantage of a sound business principle that was probably yielded him greater returns in both dollars and goodwill than any other single policy ever inquired or in a, I said it the first word, and acquired it at the Fort plant. By paying more wages than the average, he received more service and better service than the average. A single stroke through the inauguration of that minimum wage policy, Ford attracted the best labor of the market and placed a premium on the privilege of working in his plant. I have no authentic figures at hand bearing on the subject, but I have sound reason to conjecture that for every $5 Ford spent under this policy, he received at least $7.50, worthy of service. I also sound reason to believe that this policy enabled Ford to reduce the cost of supervision because employment in this plant became so desirable that no work would care to run the risk of losing his position by soldiering on the job or rendering poor service. Where other people or what other employers see, reading is not always going to be perfect all the time. I still have a cold. So, okay, where did I? Okay. When other employers were forced to depend upon costly supervision in order to get the service to which they were entitled and for which they were paying, Ford got the same or better service by the less expensive method of placing a premium on employment in his plant. Marshall Field was probably the leading merchant of his time, and the great Field store in Chicago stands today as a monument to his ability to apply the law of increased return. As an example, a customer purchased an expensive lace waist at the Field store but did not wear it. 2 years later, she gave it to her niece as a wedding present. The niece quietly returned the waist to the Field store and exchanged it for another merchandise, despite the fact that it had been out for more than 2 years and was then out of style. Not only did the Field store take back the waist, but what is of more importance, it did so without argument. Of course, there was no obligation, moral or legal, on the part of the store to accept the return of the waste at the late date, which makes the transaction all the more significant. The waste was originally priced at $50, and of course, it had to be thrown on the bargain counter and sold for whatever it would bring. But the keen student of human nature will understand the Field store not only did not lose anything on the waste, but it actually profited by transaction to an extent that cannot be measured in mere dollars. The woman who returned the waste knew that she was not entitled to a rebate. Therefore, when the store gave her that to which she was not entitled, the transaction won her a permanent customer. But the effect of the transaction did not end here. It only began, for this woman spread the news of the fair treatment she had received at the Field store far and near. It was the talk of the woman of her set for many days, and the Field store received more advertising from the transaction than it could have purchased in any other way, with 10 times the value of the waste. The success of the Field store was built largely upon Marshall Field understanding the law of increasing return, which prompted him to adapt as a part of his business policy the slogan, "The customer is always right." When you do only that for which you are paid, there is nothing out of the ordinary to attract favorable comment about the transaction, but when you willingly do more than that which you are paid, your action attracts the favorable attention of all who are affected by the transaction. and goes another step toward establishing a reputation that will eventually place the law of increasing returns to work on your behalf. For this reputation will create a demand for your service far and wide. Carol Downs went to work for W.C. Durant, the automobile manufacturer, in a monitor position. He is now Mr. Durant's right-hand man and the president of one of the automobile distributor companies. He promoted himself this profitable position solely through the aid of the law of increasing returns, which he puts into operation by rendering more service and better service than that for which he was paid. In a recent visit with Mr. Downs, he asked him to tell me how he managed to gain promotion so rapidly. In a few brief sentences, he told me the whole story. When I first went to work with Mr. Durant, said he, I noticed that he always remained at the office long after all others have gone home for the day, and I made it my business to stay there also. No one asked me to stay, but I thought someone should be there to give Mr. Durant any assistance he might need. Often he would look around for someone to bring him a letter, file, or render some other trivial service, and always found me there ready to serve him. He got into the habit of calling on me. That is all there is to that story. He got into the habit of calling on me. Read that sentence again. He got into the habit of calling on me. Read the sentence again, for it is full of the meaning of the richest sort. Why did Mr. Durant get into the habit of calling on Mr. Downs? Because Mr. Downs made it his business to be on hand, where he would be seen. He deliberately placed himself in Mr. Durant's way in order that he might render service that would place the law of increasing returns back to him. Was he told to do this? No. Was he paid to do it? Yes. He was paid by opportunity and offered for him to bring himself to the attention of the man who had it within his power to promote him. We are now approaching the most important part of this lesson because this is the appropriate place to suggest that you have the same opportunity to make use of the law of increasing returns that Mr. Downs had. And you can go about the application of the law in exactly the same way that he did, by being on hand and ready to volunteer your services in the performance of work that others may shriek because they are not paid to do it. Stop. Don't say it. Don't even think it. If you have the slightest intention to bringing that old-time morn song entitled, But My Employer is Different. Of course, he is different. All men are different in most respects, but they are very much alike in this. They are somewhat selfish. In fact, they are selfish enough not to want a man such as Carol Downs to cast his lot with this competitor, and this very selfish may be made to serve you as a asset and not as a liability. If you have the good judgment to make yourself so useful that the person to whom you sell your services cannot get along without. One of the most advantageous promotions I ever received came about through an incident that seemed too insignificant, that appeared to be unimportant. One Saturday afternoon, a lawyer whose office was on the same floor as the employer came in and asked whether I knew where he could get a stenographer to do some work that he was compelled to finish that day. I told him that all the stenographers had gone to the ball game and that I would have to been gone had he called 5 minutes later, but that I would be very glad to stay and do this work because I could go to the ball game any day, and his work had to be done then. I did the work for him, and when he asked how much he owed me, I replied, "Oh, about $1,000, as long as it is you. If it were for anyone else, I wouldn't charge anything." He smiled and thanked me. Little did I think, when I made that remark, that he would ever pay me $1,000 for the afternoon's work, but he did. 6 months later, after I had entirely forgotten the incident, He called on me again and asked me how much my salary I was receiving. When I told him, he informed me that he was ready to pay me that $1,000 that I had laughingly said I would charge him for the work I performed for him. And he did pay it by giving me a position and $1,000 a year increase in salary. Unconsciously, I had put the law of increased returns to work in my behalf. That afternoon, by giving up the ball game and rendering a service that was obviously rendered out of a desire to be helpful and not for the sake of a monetary consideration. It was not my duty to give up my Saturday afternoon, but it was my privilege. Furthermore, it was a profitable privilege because it yielded me $1,000 in cash, a much more responsible position than the one I had formerly occupied. It was Carl Downs' duty to be on hand until the usual quitting time, but it was his privilege to remain at his post after the other workers had gone, and that privilege poorly exercised brought him greater responsibility and a salary that yielded him more in a year than he would have made in a lifetime in the position he occupied before he exercised the privilege. I have been thinking for more than 25 years of this privilege of performing more service and better service than that for which we are paid. And my thoughts have led me to the conclusion that a single hour devoted each day to rendering saving or service for which we are not paid can be made to yield bigger returns than we receive from the entire remainder of the day during which we are merely performed our duty. Much good work is lost for the lack of a little more. Edward H. Harriman. Now my mouth is, I will finish chapter 8 because yeah, I'm halfway through that chapter. So thank you for tuning in. Thank you, replay viewers. I appreciate you. You all have an amazing Monday. Take care. God bless. Namaste. And I will see you on the next live. Tulu.